Madam Secretary, Director, the various officials. We have a lot to celebrate today, as you know, both in the policy as well as in the energy front. From my experience at DOE, I know it's the hardest working agency. And when I was thinking about what I might talk about today, I wanted to talk about culture and engagement. And I see some of the folks that I had the pleasure of being engaged and working hard with. So I know our culture is one of work hard and work hard. There wasn't a whole lot of play, and I know that if you're anything like myself and my team, leaving before 9 o'clock at night was an early night. In fact, we had Wednesday nights, which was put down your pencils and leave by 8:30, where I'd walk around and tell the mostly interns that we had, who were phenomenal, working with our great individuals that are here full time, that you have to leave. It's 8:30. Go. Leave, go have fun. But I know it's hard working, and I also know we've arrived as one of the top tier agencies in the federal government. How do I know that? Well, I was working out in the gym a couple weeks ago, and there was Secretary Moniz sitting to the left of Secretary Kerry at the Iranian nuclear negotiations, and I was like, Secretary Moniz, that's awesome. So I think that in a short period of time, because of your engagement, we've been able to accomplish a lot. If you think about over the last 6 years, I was here during the Recovery Act, and just to name a few things I thought about, we doubled the amount of renewables onto the grid. We actually started licensing the first small modular nuclear reactor. And the significance of that, which I think is a testament to our ability to engage across the agencies as well. So there was the executive order, Greening the Government, that came out. I think it was Executive Order 31514, something like that. And we all had to come up with what percentage of our energy would we commit to being green by 2020. And we knew DOD was going to come out strong, so we knew we were the Department of Energy. We had to be strong also. But thinking about it, we consume about 1 gigawatt of power, and one small modular reactor at 300 megawatts would green our government, at least our agency in the government. And that really was the genesis of it. And then we worked across the agencies to make sure there was one word in our response to that greening the government, which was nuclear. And it shows up once, which is important because it's the strength of words. And there isn't a word, I think, that's any more stronger about today than pride. And Trey, you were brilliant at that. I want to get your comments, because it's exactly right. The kind of pride that comes from respect, not hubris, but respect for each individual person. So when I was thinking about all that we've accomplished, we go back a little bit, and I think about my own career a wee bit. And I graduated from Stanford in 1984, and I went to Ireland for a postdoc. Now, it was interesting because when I arrived in Ireland, it still wasn't legal to sell contraceptives. So my friends would actually take the train, 3-hour train up to Belfast. In 1985, there was a referendum on divorce, and it was made illegal. And I saw how my friends and colleagues felt disenfranchised. They felt less than because they couldn't be with the people they loved in an open way, fully engaged as citizens of that society. Kind of sounds familiar. But 30 years later, I have to say I couldn't be any prouder of my Irish heritage than what they did last month. So, I am also an Irish citizen. I did have to give it up when I became undersecretary, but I have been able to be dual citizen again. I'm very proud of where we've seen and what we've done in the last 30 years. So after a couple years of postdoc in Ireland, I came back to the University of Colorado at Boulder, mainly because there's an old Irish saying that 7 children can be taken care of by one mother, but 7 children can't take care of one mother. And I thought, okay, we'd all grown up, we've gone to all places around the country. I'd go back to Colorado, and I'd be the one to be there during her later years. Of course, then she announced she was getting married, remarried. My father had passed in 76, so it was an interesting and terrific 14 years. But during that time, I remember the election of 1992, and some of my friends were very excited that Bill Clinton got elected. I did have friends from the other side of the aisle. Maybe they were less excited. But all of us walked out of the celebration that night very depressed. And it was because there was also something else on the ballot in 1992. And it was passed November 3rd, 1992, which was something called Amendment 2, which meant that any of us could be fired for being gay. And in the academy, that's important. I actually sat on promotion and tenure, and I did see colleagues come up whose scholarship was questioned because it was in queer studies. So not having that protection would be critically important to really the underpinnings of the mission of that particular institution. Couldn't have been happier in 1996 because of the engagement and because there were talented advocates and people got engaged that we were able to go back and win at the Supreme Court that the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment would violate our right to work. So that was 1996. I left in 99. My mother passed. I went to Duke to be Dean of Engineering. During that time, I remember looking at the same-sex benefits and realizing that we had same-sex benefits, and that's what I argued to the trustees. I went and engaged the trustees when I was there at the University of Colorado, and I said, you realize that because we have Amendment 2, and because we don't also have same-sex benefits, that we're competing against institutions like MIT and Stanford, the same faculty, that do have these benefits. How are we going to stack up? What was interesting is that I had a postdoc, and he was able to get his girlfriend same-sex benefits because, well, okay, let me start that again. They were not the same sex. Okay, so I had a postdoc and his girlfriend. He was from Scotland, and lovely people. He was able to get health care benefits for his girlfriend. I could not get it for my long-term partner. So when I went to Duke, I was pleased that they had same-sex benefits, but I noticed in the retirement manual that if you were in a same-sex relationship, that your benefits once you retired ended after 3 years. Now, I wasn't sure why 3 years. But there were faculty members that were retiring that got engaged, and the Provost Lang, and I give him a lot of credit, with the stroke of a pen, took it out. The next day, anybody retired, they had the same benefits for their partner as not. The chapel, which is one of the iconic features at Duke. In fact, if you ask anybody that at Duke, where's the first place you should go, it's a toss-up between Cameron Indoor Stadium and the chapel. Frankly, I think the chapel wins, but individuals could not have commitment ceremonies in the chapel. The president, with a stroke of a pen and quite a lot of criticism, removed that. So now you can get engaged and actually get married in North Carolina, and you can do it in the chapel. So we've seen a lot of progress. I think the most stunning, though, was when I was being vetted for Undersecretary of Energy back in 2009. And I remember going to see Asaf Nagler, who became my chief of staff. And he was the actual person, presidential personnel, who was vetting me. And they ask you all the typical questions. Have you done this? Have you done that? Did you do this? And after you've gone through all these questions, the last question they ask you is there something we ought to know? And I looked at Asaf and I said, yes, I'm gay. And he said, oh, that's great. That's a check in the... I am now into, couple decades of work, and I have to tell you, it's probably the first time that I ever felt so empowered that it was considered to be a real positive. So that was very, very exciting to me. I think that what we have seen also in the last 6 years, 37 states and DC allowing same-sex marriage, I think that's just terrific, and I really credit the leadership of this administration, from the vice president to everyone here. Because as Thomas Jefferson said, there's rarely innovation at the margin. It has to come from people all over the country realizing times change, we have to change, we have to move forward. And I think that it speaks also to the strength of the culture, because I know that from the Department of Energy, service is our common bond. And it only gets stronger when we engage as a society and when we offer the same rights to all citizens regardless of race, creed, color, gender, and or sexual orientation. And so that's why when I was thinking about some of the things that I might share today, I was just thinking again about the culture and the engagement and why culture is so strong. Because culture doesn't matter as much when you're winning, whatever you define winning as, when things are going well. When culture is important is when you face adversity, when you really have to pull together. And that's where either startups, after I left the Department of Energy, I started a company, I'm going to say a few words about that. When times get tough, that's when you find out, is your culture strong enough to persevere and move forward? And in my mind, that will make the difference in our country facing some of the challenges that Director Harris referred to. What I was pleased about is that all along I've had great leaders, whether it was at the universities I served or the Department of Energy, that really got engaged on many issues, including the rights and opportunities for LGBT individuals. Reason why I started a company when I left DOE, one of the things that I'm most proud of that we did as Undersecretary as a group, where there are 100 individuals that came together to do a thing called the Strategic Technology Energy Plan, which was the first time that we had really laid out what would we have to do to get to 80% clean electricity by 2035. How could we do 26 to 28% reduction of our greenhouse gases by 2025? And could we get to 83% of our greenhouse gas reductions by 2050? And I felt, since I had helped put this together to reality, that I had an obligation to get engaged and to see it through. So I started a company about 4 years ago called Enduring Hydro. We did a joint venture with a PE firm out of New York called now Cube Hydro, and we've raised the largest fund for hydropower in the United States. So we have approximately $1.5 billion between equity and debt to put together to achieving our individual goal for hydropower. Now I'm going to drill down to one little nit in the plan, which is, can we get 12 to 14 gigawatts more of clean electricity from hydropower by upgrading, modernizing, or powering our non-powered dams? So in terms of moving forward and seeing where can we go when we have a dream and we have a goal, can we create a culture outside that mimics the one that I enjoyed at DOE, which was hard work and to enjoy and have fun? And after 4 years, we've turned the corner. We brought our first plant online in 2013. We now own 13 plants that we own and operate, mainly in PJM, that's Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland, and New York, and we plan to double or more this year. And one of the things that I've enjoyed in my life is setting those goals, doing what we can individually, and engaging. And I think as I conclude, say just a few things in closing. You may remember, some of you knew me, that I'm a real nut about the environment and about clean electricity. And so if I'm walking down the street and there's a plastic bottle or an aluminum can, I'll pick it up, but I won't throw it in the trash. I'll make sure it gets recycled. And if you've ever heard of the Paradoxical Commandments, so this was something that was written in 1968 by Dr. Kent Keith, and it was popularized because it was found on the wall when Mother Teresa passed away. But it goes something like, the good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. So I kind of rewrote it for one of my talks, and I said, the energy you save today, someone will waste it tomorrow. Save energy anyway. And it goes on like that a little bit. And what I've realized is that each one of us can make that difference. And what Mother Teresa said at the end of these Paradoxical Commandments, and you can Google it, the very last thing, which I thought was very powerful, was, you see, in the end, this is between you and God or the universe, whatever you perceive him or her to be. Well, that part was my part. It was never about between you and them anyway. So our engagement, whether it's the little things we do every day to help someone else succeed, or the little things we do every day to try and preserve our civilization for the next generation, this isn't about saving the planet. The planet's been here billions of years. It'll be here billions of years after us. The question is, will it be inhabited? Will it survive for our children and our children's children? So the same passion that I have for human rights, for LGBT rights, I know you share it for trying to clean and green our grid. And I would just like to say that we need to engage, all of us, in order to address some of the challenges that we talked about. Director Harris mentioned that 20 to 40% of the youth that are homeless in the U.S. self-identify as LGBT. I would say homelessness, preserving civilization, how our planet adjusts to climate change, and mitigating it, and terrorism are my three top, if I could have three wishes, those would be the things that I would solve. What each of us does every day is important to coming up with these solutions. It's part of the solution. How we will do it is whether we will be successful. If we continue to do it together and be engaged, we will be successful. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know what it's like to take 45 minutes out of your day to be here, and I couldn't be happier to share this. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Secretary, Director.